City of Mystery in the Philippines, the most terrifying urban legends of the region. Have you heard of the city of Biringan? The city where people are not like us, but the scenery is something that will leave you in awe, but said city needs to be avoided at all costs according to people who have been there or lured to go there. We are fond of knowing stories that tackle fantasy, magic, and anything extraordinary, and we seem to believe in its existence, especially if other people spread the veracity of their experience to that world. Is Biringan City one of those wonderful places that we should aim to go to, or should we not dare ourselves to visit the invisible city? First off, what and where is Biringan? It is reportedly an undefined location in the Philippines. It is said to be somewhere between Calbayog City and Catarman, northern Samar. The city is said to be invisible, making it one of the most terrifying urban legends of the region. The city has its metropolis comparison, but what makes it more mysterious is that it is only available for viewing at nighttime, and its indescribable grandeur never ceases to amaze anyone who gets the privilege to see the mystic city. But the city of Biringan doesn't only elicit positive feedback from everyone. To some, fear and panic evoke whenever the city is being mentioned, making it like our relay to them never ever speak of the city or even mention its name. Why? Because the people who get to visit the place are being lured to the place only because the city needs its prey. There are also claims that if you get to visit the invisible city, you need to be cautious and pray for yourself because you are currently being possessed by the demon. Making the city more mysterious and scarier to anyone who has heard the stories of the people who have lost a relative to the said city or who were able to survive and come back to their bodies. Biringan is claimed to be the legendary and mystical home of the elementals, or the enchanted ones. They are said to be experts in changing their appearances to lure their visitors/victims. They can transform into anything or anyone presentable, ideal, or wonderful to the eyes of their visitors. They have their distinguishing characteristic, and that is the lack of the philtrum. Philtrum is the indentation below the nose and above the upper lip. It is also stated that if an inhabitant of the city gets to be attracted to mortals to its neighboring city, they do what it takes to bring that mortal with them. And when they succeeded, the mortal's physical appearance will be like theirs, no philtrum. Up to this day, Biringan is still being debated if it is truly a city in Samar that was forgotten, or a kingdom to the elementals that can be the portal to our world, to the elemental and ethereal world. The invisible city may be a wonderful sight to see for those who have vivid imaginations, are brave to experience a new world, or anyone who wants to detest its existence, but one thing is for sure, the people who have been able to share stories about it and how their stories matches and fit together may prove something. This may be a product of imagination, hallucination, or just a mere way of asking for attention, but what would you actually do if you get to set foot on the invisible city filled with beautiful yet creepy inhabitants? More history. Biringan Part 1, the land of enchantment in the province of Samar, the Philippines. The mention of Biringan evokes awe, fear, intrigue, knocking on wood, and innumerable signs of the cross. What is Biringan? It is reportedly an undefined location somewhere between Calbayog City and Catarman, northern Samar, where a mythic city of indescribable grandeur is said to exist, unvisited by ordinary mortals, known only by magnificent folk stories that refuse to die despite the advent of television and the internet. Other reports extend its area to as far south as San Jorge, Samar. Biringan's now you see it, now you don't. Quality indicates it is not of the usual land and water terrain in which we live. It seems to exist in a different dimension, which explains why its boundaries can overlap with known towns and cities of Samar Island. On moonless nights, seafarers aplenty have reported seeing a dazzling city of light. In a few minutes, though, the manifestation is no longer visible. Obviously, Biringan is not likely to be shown on any map or atlas. But specialized, infrared, ultraviolet, etc., satellite mapping photography has reportedly turned up a shining area in the reported general location of Biringan. They say Biringan is the legendary home of the Encantos enchanted ones, and half Encanto, half human progeny. The Encantos are most likely elementals, as old as the mountains and rivers in the area. They are apparently shape changers because they have been reported to appear in whatever form they wish, human or not. But in human form, their distinguishing characteristic is the lack of the philtrum, the indentation below the nose and above the upper lip. Part 2, Portals to and from an ethereal city. There are places on the island of Samar that have been described thus. There is one story of a bus plying the night route from Capalogan City to Tacloban City. Somewhere halfway, when the bus had been emptied of its passengers, the driver and conductor stopped to pick up two young lady passengers. Their stated destination was quite off the main route, but the driver consented because the two had offered triple the usual fare. When the two mysterious passengers had alighted, the driver turned the bus around to get back on the highway. But, to his utter bewilderment, he could no longer distinguish the dirt road they had taken just moments ago. Conceding that they were lost, they decided to spend the night at that very spot. At dawn the next day, they were confused when they found themselves and the bus at a desolate mountaintop. A large tow truck had Toby sent through rough mountain trails just to bring the bus back to civilization. Then there's the story of a bus that somehow lost its way and the driver stopped to pass the night at some sort off depot. When he and his passengers woke up the next morning, they were in the middle of a clump of bamboos with no roads anywhere around them that would have brought them where they were. Perhaps the most classic example of these gateways involved two motorcycle riders riding tandem on one bike. They were traveling the highway at night from western Samar to eastern Samar. It was around 9 o'clock in the evening and they were negotiating the foggy, winding passes halfway to Biringan, eastern Samar. The night air was chilly and only their motorcycle headlights split the dark ahead. The deafening silence was only punctuated by the occasional chirping of insects. Suddenly, as they rounded a sharp curve, they were suddenly engulfed in a bedlam of sound. It was as if they had entered a very busy freeway, invisible to them, but its sound assaulted their ears. Shrill air horns blared from every direction and sudden gusts of wind rocked their motorcycle as if huge trailer trucks were passing them by on all sides. The driver tried his very best to keep the motorcycle handlebar steady. It was only after they had rounded the next curve that the noise suddenly died down and the night air was deathly still once more. Still, these two motorcycle riders and scores of other highway travelers will never forget their encounters with Biringan's portals. Part 3, Supernatural Abductions. Supernatural abductions. Quite seemingly out of this world, but reportedly true. Some of the most persistent incidents related to the Biringan phenomenon involve the relocation of humans from the mortal world to Biringan. What happens is, whenever a Biringan inhabitant takes fancy to a mortal, usually a fair maiden or attractive lad, he or she is taken away from the mortal world by way of bugcott, a Visayan vernacular term. The transition usually takes the form of sudden death, i.e., accidents, fatal illness lasting a few hours at most, sudden disappearance from any physical location. In reality, the mortal never really dies. Her consciousness or spirit is taken by the Biringan entity. The anguished kin of the victim is left with the lifeless body, where in fact it is not the actual cadaver but a log or similar physical object configured to look and feel like a real lifeless human body. All the while, the victim now resides in Biringan as the wife, husband, or servant of the supernatural being which took her away. I once knew of a very beautiful lady in Compilation city in the province of Samar in the Philippines who was separated from her husband and had 3 good-looking kids. One day, in the mid-70s, the car she was driving suddenly turned turtle on the highway near San Jorge, Samar, causing her sudden untimely demise. The bereaved family held a decent wake for her and had her body properly buried. Until the present, however, there are persistent recurring reports of this lady being seen in the reported location of Biringan city, and she is reportedly now queen of the Encantos who lives there. No wonder a portion of the population of the city is half Encantos, half human. It is these progeny who is reportedly fond of frequenting places where mortals abound for relaxation and entertainment, i.e. parks, beaches, night spots. This is a direct result of all the cases of supernatural abductions. Part 4, Heavy Equipment for an Invisible City. Heavy equipment for an invisible city? Uncanny but true. In the 60s, Tacloban City in the province of Leyte, the Philippines, was the commercial hub of the eastern Visayas region. It was the natural port of call of passenger and cargo ships plying the Visayas-Manila route. Who could ever imagine that manifestations of Biringan's existence would take physical form? One particular incident, which is still word of mouth to this day, involved the arrival of a large lot of first-class heavy equipment from the United States. The shipment consisted of bulldozers, graders, payloaders, and hauler trucks. Post officials were astounded when they examined the freight documents and discovered the entire consignment listed the destination as Biringan City. Since the fabled city's reputation had spread far and wide in the eastern Visayas region, people were in a tumult of speculation as to who will claim the equipment. Following prescribed port rules, the heavy equipment was unloaded and neatly parked in the concrete confines of the Tacloban port under heavy guard. Months passed and still, no one came to claim the shipment. The elements were taking their toll on the equipment. Conflicting reports have it that the entire lot was either sent back to the shipper or hauled to the junkyard. Was this a matter of mistaken port of delivery of heavy equipment for an invisible city? Part 5, The Japanese Venture into Biringan Territory. In the late 80s through the 90s, the Japanese ventured into Biringan Territory. They conducted rural development work focused in the town of San Jorge, western Samar. The implementing agency was the Japanese International Cooperation Agency, JICA. The entire Samarino population was perplexed as to how the Japanese would concentrate on San Jorge when there were a lot more towns in the province which needed the development work. To implement the project, The Japanese brought in tons of equipment, vehicles and machinery, and Japanese engineers and field personnel descended on San Jorge in full force. One story involved a team of Japanese who went into the forest accompanied by a Filipino guide. Inexplicably, the guide lost track of the terrain. The Japanese promptly whipped out a very detailed satellite-generated map of the area, and the team immediately found its bearings again. A related report had it that infrared, ultraviolet or similar satellite pictures of the area kept registering a shimmering effect right on the location where the JICA was concentrated. This led to further reports that an enormous deposit of uranium is embedded deep in the bowels of the earth beneath that particular area. Others speculate that a mother lode of gold has been detected in the area. The thickest deposits are reportedly under the San Jorge area, with the ends tapering as far as San Juanico Strait to the south and the San Bernardino Strait to the north. Could there be a connection to the reported location of Biringan in the area? In Philippine folklore, elementals supposedly guard vast treasures hidden deep in the forests or deep underground. Nevertheless, the Japanese left the area without any tangible results of their rural development work. That ended the Japanese venture into Biringan territory. Part 6, Conclusion. What really is Biringan? Is it a city or kingdom existing in a parallel dimension with ours? Do these two dimensions interpenetrate at times, causing the meeting of inhabitants from ours within Kantos? Does this explain the ethereal now you see it, now you'd and tea quality of Biringan and its denizens? To this day, Biringan remains a mysterious part of Philippine folklore. In addition, everyday stories of encounters with Biringan's residents continue to be told. If these had simply been figments of the imagination, these stories would have died down a long time ago, what with the advent of 100+ channels on cable television and the internet. Still, fresh stories continue to crop up. Stories such as spirit possession by Biringan song cantos over 10 school children just because their school principal unwittingly made a bonfire next to the large belede tree in their schoolyard. How did the poor teacher know that the huge tree looming large near the old school building was the abode of a Biringanan? And that she had unknowingly injured the youngest child of the invisible occupants of the tree abode? Even modern-day kids in the Philippines, well versed in the Japanese anime sagas of the new century, still believe in the existence of the legendary kingdom of Biringan. This is an undeniable fact. Despite all the terror attacks, all the coup rumors, the hunger, the droughts, the floods, and everything, only one thing remains unshaken by it all. Biringan.